Well, we're here today with Bishop Joseph Hanefeldt, the new bishop of the Diocese of Grand Island. And Bishop, I thank you for joining us here today and spending a little bit of time and allowing the people of the Diocese of Lincoln to get to know you a little bit better.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to introduce myself to the people of the Diocese of Lincoln as well. So.
Bishop, you are a native of Creighton, Nebraska, and if we could just begin, tell us a little bit about your family life and especially the life of faith that you grew up with.
Sure. Yeah, born and raised on a farm about 10 miles north of Creighton. My father was Missouri Synod Lutheran, entered the church when he married my mom back in 1953, and I think mom was probably stronger in faith. I'm not really sure my dad quite understood, as a convert in those days as it took place, the faith, but certainly mom encouraged us. I went to just three grades, second, third, and fourth grade Catholic school in our town, St. Ledger's Academy, and then back to the public school. But I was raised to go to church every Sunday. Mom took us to confession probably every 2 or 3 weeks. On a Saturday, I was a cantor in my parish from about 8th grade on. I loved to sing, and that was just something I did in high school choir and played in band as well. And so cantoring and mass was just to me as normal as anything else, and I really enjoyed it. And so I think I had a regular formation by example, and I got to be a part of church choir as well as cantor mass since 8th grade. And so foundationally, that's kind of the basics of my background in religion anyway. So.
And before deciding to go into the seminary, were there other pursuits you had in your life, other vocations you were seeking, and occupations at one point?
I really, I grew up on a farm. I wasn't very, I wouldn't say I was really all that interested in farming. I didn't think that was really my talent. I often joke that if I was still on the farm, there'd probably be no farm left. We had high rolling hills, couldn't irrigate. It was poor quality land, old machinery. My father encouraged us as boys to think about something else than that. But what was really, I would say, big for me was Roe versus Wade. I was a freshman in high school when Roe versus Wade happened, and I was so stunned that was actually legalized. I couldn't believe it. And I said to myself, I've got to do something about that, or I've got to do something to make the world a better place. But I was thinking more in terms of politics. I was going to get a degree in political science. I thought if I could, the government was the answer, changing laws, etc. And so I, in high school, set out to figure out what I was going to do with my life because I really did not think I would be on the farm. And I wasn't praying every night on my knees, Lord, help me know it. But throughout high school, actually, I was asking the Lord to show me what it was that He wanted me to do. So I suppose this is moving into my vocation story, but really it was in my senior year in high school when I had a chance to visit St. John Vianney Seminary in Minnesota. It was the only year, in fact, that the Diocese Vocations Office had a coach bus opportunity for high school guys to go visit, sort of a live-in weekend to see the seminary. And the nun who was the organist in my parish where I was cantor said, "Did you see this in the bulletin?" I said, "No." She said, "Well, did you ever think about being a priest?" I said, "Well, no." And she said, "Well, you should go talk to Father." So I went and talked to the pastor, and as in fact the bus was full. There was no openings in the bus. 1 week before it went, there were 2 openings. And so I was able to get on the bus and go. Now, I have to be honest, I was thinking I'd never been to Minnesota, and this would be 2 days out of high school. This might be a great opportunity. And I walked into that seminary, and it was like clear. This is my vocation. It was priesthood. And I say to people, it sort of snuck up on me. I didn't imagine when I was going there that I would actually end up a seminarian there, and I haven't looked back since. So.
Well, even though you said that the vocation kind of snuck up on you in that way, were there any priests or people in particular that were notably influential on you, or maybe in sustaining you throughout the seminary?
I would say the priest who was in my hometown at the time, was at Boy de los Angeles at the time, was probably around 45 or 50. It was probably one of the younger priests I had seen in very rural part of the Archdiocese, and just seemed like a nice guy. He made priesthood seem possible for me just because he was a nice, kind, caring kind of person, and I wasn't in close contact with him throughout the 8 years of seminary, but I began to meet other people who I think along the way were encouraging, spiritual directors in seminary, other friends, other pastors that I got to know. So.
Well, I've noticed just in looking at the different ministries you've served in that you have a wide variety of things throughout your priesthood so far. And how would you say that those different ministries, teaching, work as a pastor, administrator, in different capacities, how did that, maybe the relationships that you built with people, how has that shaped your priesthood so far leading into your episcopacy?
I often think about all our assignments as ongoing formation. And while we're there for them and their particular needs, what we are called to do as priests really is formative for us. And if we're really noticing in our own prayer what we're experiencing as priests, I think that it's an amazing thing how the Lord furthers our own spiritual development, our own spiritual formation by virtue of the things that happen in our ministry. Joyful things, sorrowful things, tragic things, amazingly beautiful things, and everything in between. That I really feel like the various things I've been able to do in my priesthood of 31 years almost as I came here has really been as much about me in a sense and my own ongoing formation as it has been. So it's the reward of ministry, really.
I know that you studied as a seminarian in Rome and was a spiritual director at the North American College as well in Rome. What memories and events stand out in your mind in your years that have been spent there in the Eternal City?
Oh, that could be probably a long list. I was in Rome 1980 to 84, so I arrived in Rome when Pope John Paul II was right at his second anniversary of his papacy, a couple months short of that. I was in Rome the day that Pope John Paul II was shot. I was actually in the square. I heard the shots, which was unbelievable, to put it mildly. I remember praying for his recovery, and then joyfully celebrating so many things after that. My own diaconate at the Basilica of St. Peter at the Vatican. Our class was able to meet with Pope John Paul II afterwards and our families the next day, and he was like such a beloved father to all of us. So I was able to serve Mass for John Paul II, New Year's Eve Mass at the Church of the Jesu in Rome with other Americans, New Year's Eve 82 to 83. There was an opportunity for all of us as seminarians to be down at the Vatican when President Reagan and Nancy Reagan were visiting Pope John Paul II, and the U.S. Ambassador to the Holy See was able to have us come and join at the end of the audience with him. All kinds of great opportunities in Rome, and this last time serving at the seminary as a spiritual director from 2007 to 2012, it was really a beautiful thing to be there for the year of the priest. And to be in the Basilica for Vespers when our Holy Father, Pope Benedict, opened the year for priests, and to be in the square to celebrate the largest concelebrated Mass in the history of the Church, estimated 15,000 priests concelebrating with Pope Benedict in St. Peter's Square in June of 10, I believe it was. So different things like that, really, opportunities that stand out. When the North American College Seminary celebrates its 150th anniversary, Pope Benedict had us come down to the Vatican, which was a great opportunity. Speaking of which, Pope Francis is going to the North American College tomorrow, May 1st, for that invitation to be at the seminary itself. So the guys are really rejoicing in that right now. Those are some of the things that come to mind.
Oh, those are great. And, I might say that being now in the Diocese of Grand Island, it's largely rural. How do you think maybe you can take some of those experiences in Rome, which many would say would be very different than that around here? How could that maybe be beneficial to your service here in Grand Island?
It's a great question, and I feel like I can be the link between there and the diocese here, the people. I can, in a sense, a link, or I have to obviously represent the church here, but bring the interests of the church, in prayer and back to Rome, to bring the experience of Rome to their lives, and so a kind of a connector or a link uniting that. I think the bishop does that in any diocese, but in particular, as you frame it, Rome to rural Nebraska, it's like it seems very far away, I'm sure, to many people in the diocese who never had or will have a chance to go there. And I feel like I can be the connector, the link for them with our Holy Father, with Universal Church, its teaching, its beauty, and what the Church asks of them. So,
could you describe your reaction when you found out that Pope Francis had named you the Bishop of Grand Island?
I would say this. My first reaction was, "Oh, those prognosticators have won," or something like that. When you lived in Rome, when you study in Rome, we didn't have a lot of monsignors in the archdiocese. I got named a monsignor, my last name there. Everybody predicts this.
Yeah.
And I really were like, okay, I know a lot of people from my point of view who live and work in Rome who, aren't named bishops. So to me, when people would say this, it was kind of them and they meant it sincerely, but it was more prognosticating. So when I on a Saturday morning, December 20th, looked at my phone and I saw that the light was blinking, I thought, because we cover Methodist Hospital in Omaha, we're right there, I thought, if this is the hospital, I better see what the call is before I start my homily. And it was, of course, the fourth Sunday of Advent. The gospel is the Annunciation. Let it be done to me according to your word. Mm-hmm. And I answered the phone, and it was Archbishop Vigano, the nuncio in Washington from the Vatican, his voice asking me to please call the nunciature as soon as I got the message. And I could only think of one reason why the nuncio would probably be calling me. And I think I just sort of like, courage, So I went over to the chapel and I made a little visit for about 20 minutes and just asked the Lord for, if this is what I think it is, give me the strength. And so sure enough, and that's what the Archbishop Vigano said, there's a lot of research into this, and our Holy Father is certainly confident of, all that's been done to make this choice, and can you say yes? And so I did, and I was thinking afterwards, how would I have said on Sunday the next day to everyone, do what Mary did?
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have. So in many ways, I think Our Lady prepared me by virtue of the timing of it all, the Annunciation Gospel, to be able to say yes by having had to reflect on that gospel in preparation for Sunday Mass. So, and then it was they didn't know it, but it was easier to preach that Sunday. So
I'm sure it was. Yeah, I'm sure it was. Well, and obviously you're very new here to the diocese, and what would you say, just in your month now after being installed here, what are kind of your impressions and your thoughts so far?
I've found in many confirmations, I've had 11 confirmations last month, and I found people are first of all very welcoming, eager to meet me, very grateful that I'm coming, instead of delegating the confirmation of Bishop Denninger, since I am so new. Mm-hmm. They're very open, they're very eager for anything. After homilies and after confirmation receptions, people are noting things I've said in my homily. They're very personal. I've also noticed that every parish I've been to, I've met someone who knows someone I know. And the farthest, coming from northeast Nebraska, being from far west Nebraska, there are connections. It's a small state in some ways with regard to how many people know each other. But I've been very welcomed and very impressed by just the kind of a thirst for ongoing spiritual development and growth in their lives. So.
You chose as your Episcopal motto, "Remain in me." What led you to select that, and what's some of the background behind that?
The Remain in Me comes from a couple of retreats that I've done. It's a place, where I've gone back to in prayer. First of all, I was led there in prayer by my director, but then it was something I returned to, and it has grown in my heart over probably the last 5 years now as the way of the Christian life. That, he who remains in me and I in him will bear much fruit. The idea, apart from me you can do nothing. And the image of the vine and the branches from which it comes in John 15 really is, I think, a way of living the Christian life for all of us. That we see what beautiful grapes, for example, grow way out there on the vine, on that little wire, you might say, of nourishment in life, because the grapes, the branches is still attached, the vine is together. and that togetherness bears much fruit. And I think it's a way for me to live. It's a good reminder. It's the way I hope to run this diocese, always attached to Christ. Christ in my coat of arms is the vine, is the center of the coat of arms, and that Christ is the center of our life, attached to Christ, remaining in Him, the rest follows. And I hope to live that way. I hope to teach it. And I chose that motto for that reason, to remind me and to encourage others. So.
Now, I know you were the director of spiritual formation at the North American College and a spiritual director there, and so in a way you really helped men discern their call to the priesthood and to try to become holier priests. Having that experience in the work of vocations, what do you plan on doing to promote vocations to both the priesthood and the religious life here?
One of the things I plan to do is to nourish the vocations that are here, to really be a spiritual father for the priests in my diocese, which I think in turn, if it can be life-giving for them, will bear fruit in their own ministry, and also raising up vocations. But I think one of the primary responsibilities of the bishop of any diocese is to be a spiritual father for priests, and so to attend to that first and foremost. Secondly, to invite people into a reflection on asking the Lord what He wants for them. I think it's one thing to encourage young people to think about priesthood or consecrated life, but it could be, in a sense, reduced in that way simply to a list of possible careers. But I think if we teach people to ask the Lord what He wants, and I've done this in spiritual direction with directees about a variety of things, but to teach people, I think, and invite young people to consider as a starting point, to consider what the Lord wants, to be courageous enough to ask, and courageous enough to follow through with what the Lord reveals. But I really believe, and I've been telling young people in preparation for confirmation, that I believe the Lord will lead them to something that they will enjoy, because that's where their natural gifts lies, why He gave them those gifts. So part of it is what I want to do is, nourish the vocations that are here and attend to my priests. And the other part really is to encourage people to ask the Lord what He wants and be, courageous in responding. So.
Do you tend to have the idea of focusing, I guess, more practically than that question was pointing out, maybe focusing on high school age or in the college areas, the colleges throughout the diocese, or any thoughts to that?
Yes, I don't think I would focus on any one age, but all ages, because I think the Lord, historically, if we ask our priests in any of our dioceses, really, we'll have guys who thought about this since their first communion, and we'll have guys who didn't think about this until they were 35, in terms of priesthood. I think women religious are probably along that line as well. That there is something, so I don't think there's any one age I would focus on. You could go statistically, and I think right now, probably college age and beyond, or young adulthood, is a particular place and a time in our society, in our culture, where people are looking at that question. So I think that's an important area or a time in someone's life to consider priesthood is college and just post-college. But I really believe it's an amazing thing how many times, and I have good friends who have thought about this since their first communion. And I think we've got priests who, when they were children, played Mass, for example. I never thought of it, never crossed my mind. So I think it's important to address the question to all ages. Right now, though, I think the post-college age is a particularly important age to address. So,
have you set forward publicly, or at least in your own heart, sort of priorities that you have as a bishop here?
No, I really haven't. It's been 6 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, something like that. It'll be 6 weeks. Well, it's 5 weeks today, 6 weeks today. But I'm just getting a sense of things. I have, you might say, in a sense, an idea of some of the things I think will be important priorities, but I really don't want to impose them. I want to watch what the Lord raise up. That's part of the way I pray, is remain in me. Come to the Lord with an idea, see if this is the time when He wants me to act on it or not. When He puts, the question or someone in my life that resonates with that idea or that priority. So I've got some ideas starting, but I really wouldn't say that I've got an overarching five-year plan, for example. So.
Your diocese covers a great deal of land geographically. that obviously has within it plenty of challenges, but could you maybe elaborate on maybe what some of those challenges are, but also opportunities in being in a largely rural diocese here in Grand Island?
Sure. I think one of the challenges for a rural diocese is, in a sense, to maintain a community, because every year many of the graduates go off to college or move away for education. There are some communities that are, as is my hometown, going smaller and smaller. I think there's some parish communities that are really strong and small and strong, and I think there are other parish communities where there's, other than a Sunday Mass, perhaps not much parish life left. So I think one of the challenges with the great distance and everything else is for each parish to say, what is a meaningful parish experience for us? Are we at this point in time at the point where we just have Sunday Mass and a funeral once in a while or a wedding, but there really isn't a lot of other things happening by virtue of just who's there, who's left, and the numbers. But of course, we have parishes over 1,500 families in the diocese as well, where there's a lot going on, and bigger isn't necessarily better. There's just different challenges to face. But I really think that there is no one way of doing parish, but if the parish is strong in its smallness or vibrant in its largeness, I think really there's a matter of trying to address the gospel to every person, and if we can do that well is the goal. So.
Now, you had mentioned that in many ways your vocation was prompted, enhanced by the pro-life movement and the reality of Roe v. Wade, and you did pro-life work in the Archdiocese of Omaha. And so how do you see really the pro-life movement as it stands now moving forward into the future as a whole, since you really spent some time doing that kind of work? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the goal really is to always proclaim the truth about human life. And so I think with anything else, it's catechesis around the truth. And I think what we do in every age has to be foundationally that we don't ever give up on teaching the truth about human life. And so I suppose it's an extension of moral theology in some way, but ongoing catechesis about the truth. And that catechesis has to happen not just in elementary and high school age, but in an ongoing way for adults. For adults, more contemporarily, I think with regard to public policy, whether it's bills before the legislature or things coming up in government as well. A particular community wants to pass an ordinance or something that isn't so favorable to life. I think there's an ongoing formation that happens, but I think foundationally the way forward for the pro-life movement is to keep emphasizing the basics, the truth about human life, and then addressing the gospel to the particulars that come up with regard to public policy or community action or whatever it might be. I really like the Bishop's Pastoral Plan for pro-life activities and the 3 pillars, the educational piece, the pastoral care piece, the actual direct aid and assistance to people in need, but also the policy formation pieces, the church trying to be involved. A lot of people think the church should stay out of politics. It's not staying out of politics, it's proclaiming the gospel in the public square, in the marketplace. The church has a duty to proclaim the truth about human life everywhere. And it's not a political agenda, it's really the gospel agenda. And I think we shouldn't reduce it down to simple politics when the church is trying to teach and form and shape things that are related to government decisions. So.
Are you hopeful in regards to the future of the pro-life movement, that some of these policy efforts can be enacted, and also hearts can start to be changed towards people seeing the reality of the unborn child is really a life?
I'm hopeful in the long run. I'm not so sure in the short term. Sometimes people say things have to get bad before they get better. Let's get so bad, before they can improve. I'm not sure we're there yet. It's scary to think. It could get worse than it is in many ways. But I think there's a lot that is already, in terms of understanding and awareness about the truth of the human person, unborn children and whatnot. The scary part is the numbness that I think has occurred over the last 40 years with regard to being willing to look at and be affected by the truth. And so Long term, I'm hopeful because I believe that the basics, emphasizing the basics, going back to the basics, is working. But in short term, I think there's some really dark things and sad things, unfortunate things, and there's a head in the sand kind of feeling for a lot of people, or a helplessness kind of thing for a lot of people, and I think that only allows the trend to go the wrong way. So,
moving to just kind of more broader issues within the life of the church as it finds itself in the modern world, what do you see as the major problems and challenges that the church faces at this time, particularly in our own country of the United States?
Well, that's a good question. As I say, I think that I'm a back to the basics kind of guy. I think the people of Grand Island will probably get that pretty soon and that sort of thing. But I think it's a foundation. You can't have a sturdy structure if you don't have a good foundation. So part of what the church, I think, has to do is catechetically just get back to the foundation. I don't think, though, we will do that in the same way we used to do it. I think it's going to be a lot of one-on-one, a lot of witnessing. In other words, it isn't just catechesis. It's a catechesis that has a praxis to it, an action, an authenticity that isn't just verbal, but that is witnessed. I've often said to people in my parish, you know, you don't know how much just backing out of your driveway every Sunday and go to Mass at the same time every Sunday says to your neighbors. And what it says is church is important to you. Now, they may never stop you, they may never ask you about your faith, but they know you have a faith practice. I think this is part of what we have to do, is just be able to, you know, the gospel says, to be able to give a witness, explanation for this faith of ours. And I think the way forward is going to be when Catholic people accept the responsibility of sharing with other people why they believe. But I think much of it's going to come around the cross. It's going to come around challenges. I think we have to be ready to be beat up for our faith, discredited for our faith, discriminated against for our faith, persecuted verbally or perhaps financially for our faith. But I think it's going to take that kind of witness. And I think that's really probably what lies ahead for all of us. And it's true with some of the basic teachings of the church that are being challenged right now in public policies. So.
And in the last few years, there have been those challenges in public policy and really threats against religious liberties. We know in our own country, certainly throughout the world, even the lives of Christians that are at stake there. But here in our own country, I think sometimes it almost seems like we have to be defensive in showing that the church has a place in the public square, that it can help influence the society as a whole. What good would you say that the Catholic Church is able to play in American culture at large?
I think historically the good we've done has been to care for people. And I think that itself, for unchurched people, even people of other faiths, we have been in healthcare and we've been in education primarily, and of course Catholic Charities. An immense amount of good that Catholic institutions have done, for example, in this country. But I think all of those things are to our credit. And I think when people look to the church, they might hear news sound bites that somebody said the Pope said this or that, or teaches this or that. But I think the average person in the world, non-Catholic especially, has experienced the church as a place of support and care. Whether it's faith formation in Catholic colleges and universities, or in high schools for that matter, in grade schools, or if it's a place of faith formation, health care, and what that's brought to the table for so many people. I think we're a real witness to people that the church isn't simply about doctrine, for those who don't agree with the doctrine, but I think first and foremost we're a witness of caring for the human needs of people. And the church has been a real asset in our culture for that.
Pope Francis has spoken about how, as Catholics, we can't be afraid to go to the peripheries, as he's spoken, and that we need to be careful of becoming self-referential in the church. And how do you see, maybe, or where do you see these peripheries in the Diocese of Grand Island? Where do you see yourself having to kind of extend to the community in a broader way?
I have yet to really discover that, but one of the things I'm thinking of is how is the church helping the average Catholic diocese of Grand Island deal with that person's particular challenges or difficulties? So maybe it's something with regard to just rural life, the price of commodities, the cost of the outlay to run a farm and operate and have a family farm in a corporate world where corporations do a lot of things. It might be something basic to their livelihood in that regard. It might be access to health care when you're on a ranch, probably 70 miles from the nearest hospital, and your insurance doesn't cover that hospital and isn't accepted at that hospital, whatever that might be. I think there's a number of things that really are. It's a matter of saying what's real in your life. Maybe it's immigration. There's a number of immigrants in this diocese, certainly legal and perhaps illegal. But the thing is, what are the human needs and how can the church address them? I think there's a matter of taking everything the church teaches and saying, how does that apply to the here and now? But I think sometimes the starting point has to be what the particular individual's situation is and how can the church address that. That's one of my concerns, no matter where I'm at, as a pastor in a parish or certainly here in the diocese. So.
The church has just a great amount of witnesses. We're blessed with many saints that have gone before us that are really models of discipleship for us. And do you care to share any saints that are particularly close to you that you've been drawn to throughout your life, either by their witness or their writings and spirituality?
Certainly my own patron, St. Joseph, and I was blessed to be able to be ordained a bishop on my feast day. I think St. Joseph in particular is someone I've turned to in various ways, but particularly I think as a man, as leader of the family, as I think someone who is a patron for all kinds of concerns in terms of sexuality, whether it's being a married person, a celibate person, someone with same-sex attraction who believes that might be justified in their eyes, to look to St. Joseph as well in terms of his virtue of self-control, his virtue with regard to that. So I think for me, St. Joseph is a head of the Holy Family, head of the diocese. He is a model of workman, and a real patron for men, and along those lines as well, the value of work and the dignity of work, a patron for men in any state in life with regard to their own sexuality and self-control, and a virtuous model of that. So St. Joseph in particular is important to me. I've always had a devotion to our Blessed Mother. For me, I chose for my ordination card as a priest the image of Our Lady of Perpetual Help. And the original icon is in Rome, and I would often go to the Church of St. Alphonsus in Rome, and so I just decided to have that, my holy card for ordination. But there are so many times I think we turn to our Blessed Mother. So many times when we ought to turn to our Blessed Mother as children with spiritual needs. And so our Mother Perpetual Help has always been, certainly since my ordination, there as well as an image. Joseph and Mary sounds like the Holy Family. It really is, I think, so important for our families to connect to the Holy Family versus the message the culture wants to give about families today. Those two in particular. I study Ignatian spirituality, and so St. Ignatius is a particular inspiration for me. But various saints in different times in different ways, not so much as a devotional, but in a particular moment or particular concern might be as well. So I don't have a long list of. My middle name is Gerard, patron saint of expectant mothers. My mother gave me that name. Her first child was stillborn, and then my sister was born, and Mom prayed for a healthy boy, and here I am. So I got the middle name Gerard for that, and I've often I have prayed to Saint. I'm blanking. I could say it in Italian. The prayer that I say to every day, but Saint Raymond the non-born. Raymond Nonatus. Raymond's mother died before he was born, and he was delivered and lived, and so he's patron of the non-born. I'd never heard of this saint until I went to Rome. In fact, the cathedral in Joliet, Illinois is St. Raymond Nonatus, but I've often prayed to St. Raymond the Non-Born for people who have miscarried. And I prayed over women who have miscarried when they know they're pregnant again. And I've asked especially his intercession through this prayer that I found in Italian at a church once in Rome as a student, prayer for parents who want to have a child. And so for particular issues like that, I would turn to someone like St. Raymond, the Non-Born, for his intercession as well.
Well, one final question I hear for you, Bishop, and that is, of course, a real buzzword with a real meaning behind it that we've been hearing a lot about in the last few years under several popes is the new evangelization, the fact of re-evangelizing Catholics so that we can go out into the world and evangelize everyone. How do you see that new evangelization working itself out here in Grand Island?
Here in Grand Island or anywhere else, I think for what I've noticed, if I can get people to stop and reflect prayerfully on on letting the Lord affect them. And one of the things I've asked people to say is, what have you noticed when you notice the Lord noticing you? And I know for a lot of people it's like the cogs are like, too many notices in there. But if you stop and think about it, it's all relationship. What happens when we as people who are baptized, whether we're going to church or not, notice God as He's noticing us? And how does that affect us? You can liken it to two high school sophomores in class, in school. And the guy looks up and looks across the room and he sees the girl looking at him. And he notices that she's noticing him. And it affects him. Especially if she's a pretty girl and he likes that feeling, But he noticed that she noticed him. And then he noticed something happened in his heart. This is what we, I think, have to do with the new evangelization, is teach people to notice God noticing them. In other words, to not just know God loves them, but to feel it, to be affected by it. So my word is often to allow yourself to be affected by the love that you know God has for you. And this is when people get married. When they notice the other noticing them, they're affected by it, they fall in love, and they commit themselves totally to each other. When we notice God loving us, and we can allow ourselves to be affected by it, we can recommit ourselves to our Catholic faith and go and love and serve the Lord accordingly as new evangelized, re-evangelized Catholics. But I think it's, for many people, way too cerebral. We have to know our faith, and we have to know, what our faith teaches. But I think the way back for a lot of people is affective. And I think they have to be affected by the love God has for them. Then they will grow in their thirst for knowledge and understanding of who this God is. But I think the new evangelization or re-evangelization is going to happen, and that's what I'm trying to do in Grand Island. Teach people to notice God loving them and notice how it affects them.
Bishop Hanefeldt, thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
joining us here today.
You're welcome.
Appreciate your time.
You're welcome.